All right, we're rolling, I see. I'm gonna talk into the gizmo here. I guess it's called taking a video. Uh, but before I even do that, I'll just show you something. I took a nice walk down the shore, and I'm bringing it up here. I'll stick it in this, and hopefully you'll be able to see that. I guess you can't see it. I guess you can't see it. Right, okay. Well, anyway, that was supposed to be the shore. I just got back from my walk down there, and what are you gonna do? You can't expect everything to work. If everything worked, it'd be a perfect world. And one thing we know for sure, it's not a perfect world. Anyway, the reason why I want to talk to you today is another excellent book. It's called White Trash by Nancy Isenberg. And, I'm kind of really enjoying this because most I'm enjoying it because it is supporting what I've always come to think of as the arrangement of the classes here in the good old USA, but also because it supports another book that I think I've mentioned in these world history discussions. It's called Tidewater, and that book is pretty much about the gentry who came down here during the early colonial times, set up house, on their 7,000 acre plantations, and then went back to England. And there were literally hundreds, if not 1,000, of those families that did that, and they became the ruling elites of this country, and their progeny still populate the aristocratic upper elites of this country. And I'm not taking a stand on this one way or the other. Is it good or is it bad? It's just, it's better to know how things are than to believe in your fanciful way that things are all wonderful, when indeed they may not be. But like I said, I'm not taking a stance. Tidewater certainly set me straight. Once again, I've always kind of a sense and knew that was the case. Because, if you read history, you find out who Washington, who his peeps were, and Jefferson, his peeps, and the Adams, and all those folks. They were all could trace themselves back to the upper crusts in England. But, that was becoming a difficult path, with England having lots of its own problems. And families, no matter what, they seem to have to send off some of their young folk. And that's probably why a lot of those people wound up here. But in the Tidewater, that's the area down in Virginia and Maryland at the bottom of the Chesapeake Bay, I think the James River. Those folks came, like I said, they set up plantations on either side of Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, Virginia. They got their plantations running. They got some overlords to take care of everything. Overseers, not overlords, some managers. And then he went back to England. They had a good time. The proof of it is in the pudding, in that if you go back to these places and they're still there, you'll see a lot of that furniture and house decorations that they brought over from Europe to populate their new homes. And in Tidewater, I don't recall that there was a lot of discussion on the Europeans and how they treated the other people. I don't recall that being the case. But in this book, White Trash, that is the case and is the whole reason for the book. To look at how class was enabled, was fortified, was distributed, and how it made its mark on the society, and how it's, not that the book is primarily about this, but if you read it, you will see that those things are still with us. And it's clear that the so-called founding fathers, they wanted nothing to do with poor people. Nothing. They didn't want to help them. They didn't want to give them any a path to climb out of their muck. They just they just denigrated them. They thought they were the worst things on the planet. You were poor. There's nothing nobody could do for you. You're poor. It's your own fault. Get out of our way. We don't want you. And that was pretty much the sentiment with all the patrician early the early government types in this country, early in the colonial pre-Revolutionary War, during Revolutionary War, after Revolutionary War. The fact is that the names that you've come to know and love, they thought they had nothing for poor people. All they wanted to do was bury them. The more they could get rid of them, the better off everybody would be. Because, their minds were filled with philosophies that, these guys, you know that they're just a bunch of egomaniacs who wanted the world to establish them and their kinds as preeminent people on the planet. In this case, the planet being the new country, the United States of America. And they just wanted to make sure that they were running the show. And this book, White Trash, really goes, I think it goes decently in depth to the way folks were treated, how folks lived, the impoverished, and with places, states, counties, the names of the folks who were perpetrating these less than generous types of establishments on the poor. Now, throughout the book, the author does often talk about how these poor people, push came to shove, they didn't want to be reformed. They didn't want to have to, first of all, they did not want to work for somebody who was their overlord. There's a lot going on why they didn't want to do that and how they felt like, they would be no better than a slave and all this kind of stuff. But it was an extremely horrible time to be alive and not part of the wealthy class. Extremely bad time to be alive and be counted among the poor. Not that it's really any better for the poor today. I really don't think it is. The poor then, at least they had a constant ability to pack up and go to the next frontier, which you don't have today. You definitely could get out of town and push out another 100, 200 miles and set up home all over again. And if you did that a number of times in your life, well, then, nobody lives forever. You pull up stakes, you move on, the government tracks you down, you do it again, and everything is wonderful. Now, I did come across something called land warranties, where the government land office gave people a land warrant where they could go out without paying for this. They can go out and establish themselves on some vacant land in a quantity enough to establish a small time farm. And they were called land warrants. And that was going on. And although it's not said specifically in the book, I'm assuming that it did help the poor people who wanted to take advantage of it. A lot of them, like I said, they don't want to work. They just wanted to, just do nothing. Now, if people just want to do nothing, I don't see that as reason for busting them in the head and kicking them to the curb. I really don't. In a free society, if you don't want to work, but you can get along somehow without breaking the law, without, harming other people, well, it's a free society. Don't work. First of all, working in most situations is you're submitting to the commands, the needs of other people. And nobody wants to do that. Who wants to be listening to somebody else's orders and so on? Nobody wants to do that. They do it because they have to. They need the money. They don't want to do that. So there were some types who would refuse to do it. And they wound up being the squatters. They also wound up being the crackers and a few other names that were meant to be derogatory. It was a wild and crazy time, I'll tell you. Wild and crazy time between the early part of the 18th century, say 1730, to the Revolutionary War and 40 or 50 years after that, say up until the Civil War. It was a wild and crazy time, I'm telling you. You hear a lot today of living off the grid, we're living off the grid, that kind of stuff, but there were tons who were devoted to living off the grid back then, tons of people. And I would say, for the most part, they did it more successfully back then because it wasn't just, in your face kind of thing, which you might see today. It was, this is what they believed in, and this is the way they were going to do it. Now, they knew how to live off the grid. I'm talking about the squatters. They knew. And the feat of what? The dandy boys in the cities, in Washington and so on, they could never do that. So they were always opposed to living off the grid. They had to live in town, and you had to do what everybody else did. That's what you did. You you behaved, and behaving meant acting in a civilized manner, and anything less than the criteria set forth by the upper classes was not going to be tolerated. It was a tough time. I'm more than glad I didn't live through that. They call it the antebellum South. That's another name they call that during that period. But I'm very glad to have this book, White Trash, Nancy Isenberg. Certainly, you'll be more informed about things that you should be informed of if you read the book. And really, that's all I really wanted. I just wanted to bring that book to your attention. Not that I wouldn't have somewhere else, in something else I might be writing. And by the way, I am on that third book. I've mentioned it, the History of England, from the end of the last glacial maximum to Elgar's variations. Just in case you don't know, Elgar's variations came out in 1899. So I wanted to end that history at the end of the Victorian era. And although I have 40 pages done, I anticipating that the book will take a long time. The first two books didn't take that long. Of course, the first one, you know the story. The 800-pound gorilla won't publish it, but who cares? And the other one just sits dormant as a file. I don't know what to do with it yet, but I'll figure out something. Right smack dab in the middle of the holiday season, I didn't put any holiday piano music up. I don't know why. But life goes on, and I hope to talk to you again sometime soon, and we'll see what happens. Okay? Thank you. Bye.